All right, Team Narendra Modi 2.0 is in place. 58 ministers were sworn in yesterday along with the Prime Minister. And on the day that their portfolios have been allocated, this is the big headline. There's a shake-up on Raisina Hill. The big four ministries all have new personnel who will be at the helm. Let's start with the biggest of them all. That's Home Ministry in North Block, where Amit Shah will be, and make no mistake about this, he is the number 2 in Mr. Modi's government. He will have a direct say on all matters Kashmir. There will be an iron hand as far as dealing with Kashmir issues is concerned. And most certainly, when it comes to the contentious issues of Article 370 or 35A, both of which have been mentioned in the BJP Sankalp Patra, then expect a firm hand from the new Home Minister of the country. The other contentious issue that Amit Shah will have to deal with is the National Registry of Citizens. We've seen this implemented in Assam. Amit Shah has talked about this on the campaign trail, that he wants a nationwide NRC. Expect a strong push on that front. Keeping him company in North Block in the Finance Ministry, and this is a kick-up, an elevation for her, Nirmala Sitharaman moves up from Raksha Mantralaya to the Vitt Mantralaya. She's now the Finance Minister, but she already has her work cut out because on the day that she's assumed charge as Finance Minister, FY19 GDP numbers have come out and it is a 5-year low. It's sub 7%. Also, this marks a continuation in Team Jaitley. Remember, Nirmala Sitharaman was considered to be one of the protégés of Mr. Jaitley, so it's a continuation of Team Jaitley. And of course, this is very important from a symbolic point of view. She's the only woman in the Cabinet Committee on Security, which is the highest decision-making body of the union government. Let's go to the other side of the hill, which is South Block, which has MEA and the Ministry of Defence. The MEA has a new incumbent at the helm, somebody who spent the better part of the 30 years as a career diplomat in South Block, cutting his teeth. He's now come as the boss of South Block. He is the first Foreign Secretary who's now come as Foreign Minister, Dr. S Jaishankar. He served as ambassador to both US and China. So those two countries are going to be top priority. US and China are going to be the critical two countries that will be right up the pecking order as far as Dr. Jaishankar is concerned. As far as Pakistan is concerned, and this has been the priority area for many a foreign minister, many a foreign secretary in the past, as far as this government is concerned, this external affairs minister is concerned, there's going to be no major breakthrough expected with Pakistan. It's just going to be status quo. And then finally, the defense minister, India now has a new Raksha Mantri, Rajnath Singh. He has to deal with tense ties with Pakistan. Ceasefire violations have been continuing for the last 5 months. How does he help normalize that situation? Then you have border incursions with China. Doklam was the most tense of it all in 2017, but we've seen repeated border incursions. How does the Raksha Mantri deal with it? And finally, last but not least, the Rafale matter might have been disposed of by the Supreme Court. A clean sheet for Mr. Modi and his government as far as the People's Court is concerned. But please, let's not forget that this matter is still under review in the Supreme Court. So these four, the top 4 who make up the Cabinet Committee on Security along with the Prime Minister, the big 4, they will decide the success or failure of Team Narendra Modi 2.0.
मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का हृदय से आभारी हूं कि उन्होंने मुझे पुनः एक बार रेलवे मंत्रालय संभालने का मौका दिया।
बहुत कुछ करना बाकी है और मैं अपेक्षा करता हूं कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जो विषय तय किया और जो लक्ष्य लेकर के हम चलें और जिस तरह से हमने अपने संकल्प पत्र में भी जिन विषयों का उल्लेख किया है, उन सारे विषयों को समय और सब रहते समय से पहले पूरा करने के लिए हम सब लोग पूरे प्राण से प्रयास करें।
मोदी जी का विजन है, उस विजन को जो नए भारत का निर्माण और श्रेष्ठ भारत, समृद्ध भारत, स्वस्थ भारत, स्वच्छ भारत, उस विजन को जमीन पर लाकर के खड़े करके और देश को आगे बढ़ाने का पूरी टीम का मिशन है।
I will work with Amit Shah because in the cabinet is a number 2. That's why I will take guidance from Amit Shah and the Prime Minister.
First of all, let me thank our Honorable Prime Minister for reposing his faith in me, and all that I can assure him through you is that whatever responsibility has been given, it will be fulfilled to the best of my ability.
उनकी आकांक्षाओं के प्रति हम लोग सजग हैं, जागरूक हैं और ईमानदारी पूर्वक कर्मठता से जो काम आगे होना चाहिए।
मेरा सौभाग्य है कि जो भी जिम्मेदारी मिला है मैं प्रधानमंत्री के रोड मैप के साथ उसको उन ऊंचाइयों पर ले जाने का काम करूंगा।
पिछले जो सर्किट चले हैं इनका नारा ही था बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ। ये मोदी जी का ध्यान है और ये सरकार भी इस दिशा लेके काम कर।
All right, decoding Modi Cabinet 2.0 and the top four. What is going to be their task, their top priorities in the first 100 days for the top four? Here in our studios, G. Parsarthi, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. We also have MP Nathaniel. He's a former IG with the CRPF. Pratyush Kant is Delhi BJP media in charge. Varghese K. George is associate editor with the Hindu newspaper. And Aman Thakkar is research associate. He's joining us via Skype from Washington, D.C. He's with CSIS. Let me start with the Home Ministry first, because make no mistake, Amit Shah is the number 2 in this cabinet. He will have a direct say in all things Kashmir. So let me start with you, Mr. Parsarthi. You have on the one side a hostile neighbor. Ceasefire violations are up. The Kashmir situation internally also has not normalized. But do you expect, with this new Home Minister, an even firmer push, and even more of an iron hand in dealing with the law and order situation in Kashmir?
Well, there are two aspects to it. Certainly the law and order aspect has to be dealt with in iron hand. But there is also a development process. I had a university in Kashmir where there are younger people with aspirations to go ahead. So I'm sure both will be addressed simultaneously. And the law and order is really going to be a function of Pakistan.
Yeah.
Couple of things. The Jaish and the Lashkar have been weakened by international sanctions. Considerably. So the infiltration you're going to get is going to be more Kashmiris than Pakistanis. To that extent, there is an advantage because this Pakistanis come with a suicide aim, not necessarily the Kashmiris. So law and order, I think a combination of the army and the law and enforcement can deal with. But there is, I believe, also what I have seen of Kashmiri youth. Yes, many people take to weapons and so on, but there is a huge majority which is aspirational. That's what General Hasnain has seen in Srinagar,
and they want to join the
and
mainstream.
I've seen in Jammu. I think mainstreaming them imaginatively.
Okay, imaginatively. It's interesting you use that phrase. But Mr. Nathaniel, in terms of a security question, we have seen over the last few years, whether it was the stone pelting incidents, then the iron hand to try and Operation All Out, and then over the last few months we saw Pulwama, we saw the response to Pulwama in the form of Balakot. Where does the chapter begin now as far as Kashmir is concerned under this new Home Minister?
Right now, I think they'll have to concentrate on South Kashmir.
Okay.
There's a lot of problem. And after Burhan Wani's death, there have been about 200 chaps joining the militant groups. And they'll have to be kept under check. And until the forces are very active, things are going to be very difficult over there.
No, one is the security challenge, the other is the development/political challenge. On the political front, there is the need to hold elections. Certainly, it couldn't be done with along with the Lok Sabha elections. But let's say we're looking at the next 6 months horizon or so. Do you think the security situation has improved to an extent where they can now consider holding polls, or no?
Now that they have already had the election for Lok Sabha, I don't think it's difficult for them to hold the election for the assembly also, and it can be done.
But you are seeing considerable success for the security forces in terms of eliminating some of the local leadership of the militants.
Late, there have been a lot of operations carried out, and a good measure of success has been achieved.
Let me also get in Pratyush Khan, because when we're talking Kashmir and when we're talking the new Home Minister Amit Shah, one thing that will definitely come up, if not in the 100 days, but certainly in the foreseeable future, is Article 370 and Article 35A. The position of the Bharatiya Janata Party on this has been clearly outlined in your Sankalp Patra. The question is the ability to get that done vis-a-vis the ground reality, where politicians from an Omar Abdullah to a Mehbooba Mufti to a Farooq Abdullah have all said, if any tinkering were to be done with Article 370 or 35A, then Kashmir will burn. Pratyush Kant.
Zakka, we could not have had a better person
to deal with 370 or 35A or the Kashmir issue. Amit Shah ji is a person with a vision and with a roadmap. I have seen him work very closely. Even as BJP president, he went straight to the last man on the booth. So even in Home Ministry, you will see, he will have a plan and he will execute it. He will execute it after doing all his homework. India has seen a lot of eminent Home Ministers, but at this juncture, nobody could have been better than Amit Shah ji. And as BJP President Zakka, he has been totally briefed about what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. He is totally aware what the situation is like. Now, with paramilitary forces, CRPF is there, BSF is there. Yeah. As Home Minister of India, he is the direct boss of these paramilitary forces. And you will see an absolute change in paramilitary functioning, because here is a man of action. Amit Shah is not a politician, he is an action man. So, you will see that he will go and he will take and handle Kashmir in a very different manner. Okay. It's a bad news for all those stone pelters, all those Bharat ke Tukde, the gangs, because here is a Home Minister who means business. Here is a nationalist who is a Home Minister. Here is a Home Minister who loves his country, and he will not execute. Whole country will know his plan, and in just matter of few weeks, his plans will unfold for everybody to see.
The other thing that will have to be dealt with by the new Home Minister, and this came up in the campaign trail as well, Varghese George, is this business of the National Register of Citizens, or the National Registry of Citizens. We've seen this being implemented in Assam. There is talk of this being implemented nationwide, certainly on the campaign trail. Amit Shah did mention this, and we have seen pushback. We have seen pushback in Bengal through Mamata Banerjee saying that this is anti-Bengali and so on and so forth. How up the priority list would this be for the new Home Minister, and what may the implications of it be?
Well, I think it is very difficult to speculate how the new government will move ahead with the promise that national citizenship registry will be implemented across the country, because we are witnessing as we speak the practical problems that the government is encountering in one state, which is Assam. Yeah. And of course, the spillover effects in terms of social tension and other international reaction, all those things will have to be factored in. Now, to attempt something of that kind at a national scale, I think will have a lot of political and security implications. I think BJP will be very cautious in moving ahead with the NRC at a national level, but you will never know, because that is actually including a very strident approach in dealing with Kashmir and all questions that are related to national security. So the citizenship registry is one component of that thing. Yeah. Not only now, including in 2014, there were promises about having getting the infiltrators out of it, and there was a distinction made between infiltrators and refugees, which was also sought to be legislated. That law is also pending. So I think there is a host of national security issues that are pending.
Very quickly, on this count of registry of citizens, illegal Bangladeshi migrants, how much of a top priority do you believe this will be for the new Home Minister?
Look, in the case of Bangladesh, as I looked at the northeast from the Myanmar border. In the case of Bangladeshis in Assam, they have moved across a large part of the northeast, assimilated. It's going to be very difficult to tell the difference. You have to make up your mind. Are you going to spend time on this?
Okay.
Or are you going to spend time on development?
Okay. Okay.
It's a choice. It's a choice.
Okay. Let me now move to the second minister. We're going from North Block to South Block to external affairs, and it's intrinsically linked to internal affairs. So external affairs, there's a new incumbent, a new minister, the first foreign secretary who's become foreign minister. How much of that, G. Parsati, you spent a substantial part of your adult life in South Block. You're a career diplomat. For something like this to have happened, for a career diplomat, 30, 35 years of service, then becomes foreign secretary, retires, to come back as minister, what does that mean?
Well, let me put it this way. I've worked with a career diplomat who became president of India in K.R. Narayanan.
Okay.
in Washington. So, yes, I think I'm very happy for Jay. he comes from a very distinguished family.
Of course.
His father was not only the father of our nuclear weapons program, but also the person who drafted and worked the nuclear strategy. And he's a chip of the old block. He started his career in Moscow. He's Russian speaking, like many of us, at that point in time. But he has done some very key posts. I recall when I was in the Prime Minister's office, he was in Sri Lanka. Did a very good job in sort of putting the LTT thing in perspective. He has thereafter served, I think the important posts would really, I would say, be Singapore, US,
China.
And China.
So would it be fair to say that as far as he is concerned, the pecking order will definitely be US and China, and certainly far less Pakistan?
Let's look at it this way. The reality of power. The reality of power in the world today is the US and China. The US, we're going to have serious problems with the sanctions they've placed on Russia for arms purchases. That has to be sorted out. There are other issues with the US on the WTO.
Trade.
Interestingly, I noticed Hardeep Puri, who's a WTO expert, has now been appointed Minister of State for Commerce. So that is a good thing. So US, it can be addressed. Trump likes making deals. You buy a couple of Harley Davidsons, you'll solve a bit of the trade problem. But in the case, the larger issue is we have to watch out on Afghanistan.
Okay. Let me get Aman Thakkar also in, as well as Varghese, because Varghese has written a book on foreign policy in the Trump-Modi era, as it were. But Aman Thakkar, at a time when we're seeing increasing trade tensions between the US and China, conventional wisdom would have been that if the US and China are having trade frictions or are having trade problems, then the natural beneficiary of it should be India, to try and offset, to try and take a share of some of that trade that China may be losing or losing out. But that's not quite how it's played out. Trump, and I say this with a great degree of restraint and caution, has taken everybody by surprise, at least as far as the External Affairs Ministry is concerned, because he's like a curveball. Even if there were a $10 trade deficit with any country in the world, Trump will go out of his way to make that an issue. We all know the Harley-Davidson issue and how that became such a sore thumb. The question is, at a time such as this, how does an Indian foreign minister deal with a character like Trump, for whom clearly trade issues are top priority, and more so in the run-up to 2020 when he will be seeking re-election?
Absolutely. Well, let me begin by quoting one of my colleagues here at CSIS, Raymond Vickery, who was Assistant Secretary of Commerce, who said that President Trump looks at the trade deficit as a profit and loss statement for the country, and that's really the perspective that you're considering when you're engaging with the administration. Now, the really interesting thing is that both of the United States and India's protectionist policies are driven by their respective trade imbalances with China. And in trying to erect barriers and protect domestic industries against a Chinese threat or a Chinese dumping policy or Chinese imports, they've actually caught each other in the crossfire. With 232 and the steel and aluminum tariffs, ostensibly aimed at China, but actually India exports more steel and aluminum to the United States. So again, hitting each other when the target really is driven by their protectionist policies to protect against China.
Okay.
So I think the big consideration here is, for a foreign minister and for the broader sort of foreign policy making apparatus is to place the trade discussion not as just a trade issue, but from a broader national security imperative. How is the improper practices undertaken by China? How is the threat that both the United States and India face from China not just a trade issue, but a national security imperative? That, I think, does two things. One, it moves the conversation strictly out of just the Commerce Ministry and the USTR, which are at loggerheads, and sort of brings in other bureaucrats, other key players into thinking about the strategic relationship. And it also redirects both of our countries' attention to the issue that both of them are reacting to, which is the trade deficit with China.
Okay.
I think both of those things, if a foreign minister can keep in mind and act on that.
India has certainly tried for many years now to try and bridge that trade gap with China, but I don't think there's been anything concrete that we've seen on that front. But let me get Varghese George into this conversation on both the trade aspect as well as the strategic aspect. On the trade aspect, how do you deal with, for want of a better phrase, a slightly eccentric character like Trump, who is more hawkish than hawks on trade? And two, from the strategic point of view, how does one, we've had the Wuhan spirit with the high-level meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, and we've seen some of that bonhomie rub off on this relationship. But are we to now see more of a relationship between equals when it comes to India and China, or are we just another border incursion away from trouble?
Well, I think it's an interesting triangle that we've been trying to manage for a long time. In Trump's case, unlike the presidents which were immediately prior to him, who actually privileged strategic concerns over trade concerns, I think found in India a partner and ignored and neglected to some extent, even while they stated quite clearly they were concerned about trade deficit vis-a-vis trade issues with India, including market access, etc. They were not pressing on that fact. But in Trump's case, trade is the core and center of his politics. And he does not care as much about the strategic concerns which actually enabled the United States strategic thinkers to sort of keep the trade disputes under the wraps. Now in India also, you have to understand Narendra Modi's politics through the prism of the nationalist politics that inspires him. While he seeks very good relationship with the United States on the question of trade, if you look at his 5 years in government and you look at the Sangh Parivar BJP politics in general, they welcome foreign investment, they welcome foreign technology, they welcome foreign arms, weapon systems. But when it comes to the welcoming foreign finished goods, there is a resistance to it, and that resistance and the trade barriers actually increased quite a bit during the last 5 years of Modi government. Now, when you bring China into that equation, why President Trump has mentioned India and China in the same breath. He has mentioned India and China in the same Twitter post when it comes to trade. India and China as two countries that are not giving access to US products. India and China as two countries that pulled a fast one on President Obama in climate negotiations. India and China as two countries that have very weak IPR laws. So therefore, in President Trump's nationalist politics, India and China also appear as the same kind of adversarial role from his perspective, while the traditional strategic thinking, commentary in the United States.
The Chinese may not like the hyphenation, but thanks to Trump, we've got some amount of hyphenation between India and China. I want to move to the next minister, again back to North Bloc Finance Ministry. And Pratyush Kant, please weigh in on this, because on the day that Nirmala Sitharaman has assumed charge as Finance Minister, we also have had GDP figures that have come out for both the last quarter, which is at 5.8% for FY 18-19, and for the full fiscal year FY 18-19, it's come at 6.8%. So India is growing at sub 7%. That is going to be the single biggest challenge, most immediate and pressing challenge for the new finance minister. How is she going to address this?
The good thing about having her in finance ministry is that she has been trained by Jaitley ji. And Arun Jaitley ji single-handedly, in a very subdued manner, without making a great fuss about it, managed to fight out the whole black money parallel economy by getting the GST thing and by demonetization, everything, you know. Now, Nirmala ji is trained under him, and she is also a fighter. She understands economic. She knows what, and she has come at a juncture where she is going to fight this out, I am sure, and she has got the best people in finance ministry. She knows the department. She's familiar with the department.
But let's deal with the reality. You also, on the same day, we've also got data that shows that unemployment is at a 45-year high. Passenger car sales are down at an 8-year low. I mean, there is a serious economic slowdown that needs to be dealt with. I'm asking you, what are the big ideas out there?
Zakka, 18 crore people have been given 10,000 lakh crore rupees, in the Prime Minister Mudra Yojana. Now that is taking effect. That is really going to control the unemployment which you are seeing. And this agriculture thing you are seeing, 55% people in this country, the labor force works in agriculture. And there is the impetus which is being given to agriculture sector. The whole economy is working together.
Okay.
10 years of corruption, of non-happening, we are paying a price for that.
Okay.
You gave such bad loans. The government is fighting those bad loans. NPA is failing system.
Yes.
Give us time.
Let me also get, I mean, the strict lines between economy and strategic heft have blurred. I mean, I've always maintained that your strategic heft is almost directly proportional to your economic might.
Yeah.
Do you believe that this slowdown story is something that will certainly be top 3 or top 5 issues that the new government will have to take care of?
Look, I think sometimes our unemployment figures do not, for the people who keep talking about this jumping of non-employment, the elections proved that they had overstated their case because of the votes which went for the ruling dispensation. My own view is that we changed the face of agriculture in the 70s with the Green Revolution.
Yep.
And that C. Subramaniam, the then agriculture minister, was largely responsible of higher productivity. I think that at a time when our exports, our balance of payments is getting worse in terms of trade, we should take advantage of the full fact of these differences between the US and China.
Why are we not able to?
No, that is where we have to negotiate. I think what we should be looking at is that as the agricultural sanctions hurt, can we fill in? China is going to be a net importer of agricultural products. Can we work out a match set for that, like we would with the United States? We have to pay, and I'm glad Jaishankar is there, we have to play the US-China equation as a win-win one for us. And win-win for us means deriving the maximum benefits in trade with China. And as China is going to still remain aggressive on our neighborhood, get the maximum strategic benefit from the US. I'm quite certain between Mr. Modi and Mr. Jaishankar, they should be able to craft out such a policy.
Let me get Aman Thakur's views also quickly on the finance minister, and then I'll move to the defense minister, who's the last of the top 4 that we're looking at. There are inheritance issues, and Pratyush Kant is right in terms of, the NPA crisis, or whether it is even a slowing economy, the rural distress, the black money, which seems to have been dealt with to a great extent. The question is, and again, I keep going back to the China example, but that old Deng Xiaoping adage, hide your claws and bide your time. China grew for 30 years at double digits to become the second biggest economy in the world. That's why they have economic and strategic heft in today's world. We have to grow at double digits for 30 years. We've barely even begun. Aman Thakur.
I'll let me jump in here because this is a really fascinating conversation. The one key thing that I want to say, when you asked in one of your previous questions, why are we not able to take advantage of the fact with the U.S.-China trade war? It's mostly because of the lack of pace on reforms. If you look at where the supply chains are being rewritten now, a lot of companies that are making decisions about where they're going to move their their supply chain. It's not India yet. It's still Vietnam, and it's still Indonesia, and it's still some of the other countries that have similar sort of profiles on low labor costs and sort of a manufacturing base. And I think the big thing here for India to do is to really build and move forward on a reformist agenda. And that's something that we here at CSIS are doing, which is coming up with a list of 30 reforms, 30 big reforms that the Indian government should do between 2019 and 2024.
What are the top 3? Aman, what are the top 3?
Yeah, the top 3 are always going to be, land, labor, and clearing up the NPA crisis. And land and labor, again, this doesn't need to be a central government reform. The center can incentivize states to do this. We have seen Rajasthan, we have seen Assam, we have seen Andhra Pradesh change their labor laws to increase the Industrial Disputes Act number from 100 to 300 employees. can the BJP work with its other state governments and give them assent on amendments that they bring at the state level to raise that number as well? Because they do have a very strong number at the state level.
I agree with
so
Aman
that
100%.
will be one of the biggest reforms they can look at.
I agree with Aman 100%. It's land, labour and the NPA crisis. Let me now move to the fourth and final minister, the defence minister, the Raksha Mantri. And we have argued this, Mr. Nathaniel, for I think the last 20 years. For any defence minister, even for any home minister, when you're dealing with paramilitary forces as well as the regular military, the biggest challenge is modernization. We are simply not keeping pace with the nature of the threats that we have from our immediate neighborhood, or even the changing nature of technology when it comes to specific threats. Do you believe the defense ministry under the new Raksha Mantri will undergo the kind of modernization that it so desperately needs?
I think action has already been started on that front. They have already identified the weapon that they would be requiring for combating terrorism in J&K particularly. And in course of time, I'm sure all these weapons will be speeded up, procurement would be speeded up, and things would change for the better.
But in our country and for the last 30 years, every time there's a big weapons deal, there's always the stench of corruption around.
That fear of getting caught in some corruption cases, that in fact delays the whole thing. We have to get over this.
I must tell you something. I was a member of the Naresh Chandra committee and I've been working on defence reform. The entire structure of our defence ministry is of the 1940s vintages based on the British, which we've taken. That structure has to go. It has to become professional, and there has to be far greater integration between the service headquarters and in the ministry. They have to work in parallel, not on an up and down basis. And what he said, I think the Prevention of Corruption Act needs to be amended, because you landed the first defense secretary almost in jail when he had no hand in the Bofors game, just on the basis of some notings. You have to amend you should give the officers taking a decision. Look, Zakka, we wanted the equivalent of the Rafale in the year 2000. 2019, the first aircraft has not arrived. There is something wrong. The prices go up, new generations come in, there is technological change. Unless you change acquisition procedures, make them simple. You know, what happens is it goes up in the service headquarters, comes, reaches the top, then starts from the undersecretary and works its way up. Then it goes through defense finance. Auditor General is checking. So I think unless you restructure the working of the defense ministry, make it simpler, protect officers acting in good faith against, like the sort of stupid things which appear in the press and then taken up in Parliament, so that should end.
Pratyush Kant, I mean, a lot of folks have been arguing this for a very long time. It's time to reimagine the defense ministry, not just the way the service headquarters deals with the three services, but also to just simplify procedure. You can't be waiting for a fifth generation fighter jet for 20 years, and yet the first set of Rafales have still not come.
Zakka, you will appreciate a point that we have a minister now in Rajnath Singh ji who was facing the same challenges in Home Ministry also. He was heading so many parameters, CISF, ITBP, BSF, CRPF, with so many soldiers there. So this man is totally aware of what modernization and challenges being faced. So being the defense minister now, he knows that what is to be done for the forces. Now, when it comes to purchasing and buying of Army, Air Force, Navy, I am sure the Defense Ministry, the bureaucracy and the PMO will all work together. We are all aware of the fact that modernization is a challenge for us and we will look for it. Okay. And Rajnath ji is the best person to be there because he has been following it for the last 5 years as Home Minister.
I'm going to get a quick round of closing comments. Varghese George, I said this at the top of the show and I'm saying this again. These top four, home, finance, defense and external affairs, are going to be critical. They will, in a sense, define Narendra Modi 2.0.
Yes, I agree with that, but I would be very tempted to distill it further and make the suggestion that Prime Minister, along with the first two, that is Amit Shah and Jaishankar, they will be the real center of power in this system. I think while the Finance Minister and the Defence Minister would be key factors in that overall process, but the real decisions and the real movement of everything will be driven by Prime Minister plus the first two names that we mentioned. And I think I do expect that there will be fairly quick movement on simplifying procedure and the existing system, which totally disincentivizes and in fact actually puts officers who take decision at risk of being prosecuted and going to jail. I think that system will fairly be up for some kind of revision that the new government is in place.
All right, number one priority. Quickly, I've got to wrap up.
Well, number one priority, get your equations with China and the United States in order.
Okay.
And simultaneously, look, we have deficiencies in our defense. Let's not kid ourselves. After Balakot, things were...
And Pakistan, you're not worried about. We haven't touched about Pakistan in 40
but
minutes.
I think you need proper, far more defense modernization quickly.
Okay. All right. We'll see how the new team, Narendra Modi 2.0, the new cabinet and the top four. We're only focused on the top four because that's critical to any government and certainly to this government. We'll take a break. When we come back at 9 o'clock, Bhupen Chaubey, my colleague, will be talking about some of the other ministries, and certainly these are ministries that are going to be high priority for Narendra Modi's government in the second term, whether it's agriculture, whether it's rural development, whether it's the infrastructure ministries. In fact, the first set of decisions taken by the cabinet concern farmers. So these pro-poor ministries, pro-poor sectors, which will get a big push in the second term, that's going to be the focus at 9 p.m. on Viewpoint.